President Trump will now sign that document that will, in his words, pull the U.S. out of the Iran deal. You can see him doing that right now. Pulling out of the Iran deal means that the U.S. will be in violation of the Iran deal. The president did not explicitly say there that Iran was in violation of the deal, but he sort of turned the whole purpose of the deal on its head, saying that the JCPOA allowed Iran to pursue a nuclear weapon. This will make America much safer, is what the president.
Secretary Pompeo is right now going to North Korea. He will be there very shortly in a matter of virtual, probably an hour. He's got meetings set up. We have our meeting scheduled. We have our meeting set. The location is picked, the time and date, everything is picked, and we look forward to have a very great success. We think relationships are building with North Korea. We'll see how it all works out. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But it can be a great thing for North Korea, South Korea, Japan, and the entire world. We hope it all works out. Thank you very much.
Are the Americans being free? Are the Americans being free?
We'll all soon be finding out. We will soon be finding out. It would be a great thing if they are. We'll soon be finding out. Thank you very much.
Why not just send North Korea, Mr. President?
Donald Trump being vague on other things as he normally is. We'll all find out. We'll all find out. There's a lot of questions about what this will mean for negotiations with North Korea. As you said, Pompeo, as he just said a moment ago, Pompeo is on his way there, the Secretary of State. We're going to get to that part in a second, but back to what I was saying a moment ago. He essentially turned the deal on its head, saying that the JCPOA allowed Iran, or urged essentially Iran to start pursuing nuclear weapons. Let's be clear about what is in the deal, and I'm going to be quoting PolitiFact here because it does the best easy consensus of what's in the deal. Under it, Iran agreed not to pursue nuclear weapons and to allow continuous monitoring of its compliance. And the U.S. and other countries agreed to lift sanctions for that. Iran agreed to relinquish nearly all of its enriched uranium. That's 97% of its enriched uranium and 70% of its centrifuges, which are used to enrich uranium. It also agreed to stop plutonium production and to dismantle its plutonium reactor. Again, important that the president did not say that Iran was in violation of the deal. It's not just our allies that have been urging us to stay in the deal, not to allow the U.S. to violate the deal, but it's Donald Trump's own national security apparatus to a degree. DNI Dan Coates has said that Iran was not in violation of the deal. Pompeo has said Iran was not in the violation of the deal. Secretary Mattis said that it was in our interest to stay. Tillerson said Iran was complying. Israeli generals told Benjamin Netanyahu, and I bring this up because the president mentioned Israel as a reason to get out of this deal. Israeli generals told Benjamin Netanyahu that the deal is working. So let's get really into this. Back with us is Nick Kristof, columnist with the New York Times. Joining us as well, Brian McKeon, a former chief of staff for the National Security Council under President Obama. Trita Parsi, the author of Losing an Enemy, Obama, Iran, and the Triumph of Diplomacy, and the president of the National Iranian American Council. And from Capitol Hill is Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin of New York. He's a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and has been a staunch critic of the Iran deal. Nick, I was going to you right before the president came out and spoke, and I was going to ask you, is this about the nuts and bolts of the deal? The president really didn't like it, or is it more about that this was an Obama legacy item, that this was an Obama deal that he just didn't like because he doesn't like Obama?
Katie, what we heard was not foreign policy, it was vandalism. There was no coherent argument against the deal as such. There was a misstatement of its elements. And I say it's vandalism because the essential nature of it was to dismantle something that President Obama had done. But there was no reasoned argument here. There was a misstatement of its elements. And it was also striking that there was a range of options that President Trump could have taken vis-a-vis the sanctions, which indeed will take some time to reimpose. And so there has been hope in European capitals that he would take a more moderate approach, create another negotiating space. And in fact, he, as we just heard, took a really tough line. There was no sense that there is room for further negotiation. In fact, it rather reminded me in the worst way of the run-up to the Iraq War and the kind of heated rhetoric that we heard then. I don't think that we're on the verge of a new conflict, but I think we're setting in motion today a process that could well lead to conflict down the road.
Well, when you're talking about the lead up to the Iraq War, I think it's only fair to mention that John Bolton is now Donald Trump's national security advisor. And
indeed, if you look at John Bolton's past, on the three key issues, on Iraq, on Iran, and North Korea, in each of those he kind of embodied a hardline, hawkish path. And in each of those three cases, his policy failed. He, in Iraq, most obviously, in Iran, he helped kill a European negotiation that would have solved the problem back in 2004. And in North Korea, in 2002, he killed the agreed framework, which after it was killed, North Korea has then set in motion its present system with up to 60 nuclear warheads. So I think we've tried that approach, and I think this failed pretty abysmally. Diplomacy doesn't work great, and the Iran deal genuinely does have flaws, but it seems preposterous to blow it up without having anything else to put in its place.
Trita, what's your reaction?
I think it's, I agree with Nick, but I also want to say I think it is more dangerous to underestimate how this can lead to war than to overestimate it. I've been following this very closely, and I see a pattern in which we consistently underestimate how hawkish and how aggressive Trump will go forward. The Europeans were very late to this game. They kept on thinking that Trump wouldn't do this. So the effort they put into place to try to convince him not to do so was very, very late in the game. And they woke up very late. And just 2 days ago, they thought that he might still not do this. Instead, what did he do? He didn't just kill the deal. He actually reimposed the sanctions in the most aggressive way that he possibly could have. So I think we should be very careful not to think that this actually does start a process that very likely will lead to military confrontation unless something is done to stop it.
Brian, why was the deal put in place in the first place?
The deal was put in place to constrain Iran's nuclear program. It's no secret that they had a nuclear weapons program, as the Prime Minister of Israel talked about last week. We knew all that, and there was broad consensus among us, the Europeans, and our partners in the Middle East that a nuclear-armed Iran was not an outcome that we wanted. So the prime objective of the agreement was to constrain their program. At the time, they were within 2 to 3 months of so-called breakout of possibly having a weapon, and the deal postpones that and buys us until at least the middle of the next decade some of the constraints, and for a longer period all of the constraints, and gets us verification. It's not about trusting or believing the Iranians are good guys. We know they are not. It's on the assumption that they might cheat, but we have much more intrusive inspection regime through the International Atomic Energy Agency than we had before. Washington Post has a good piece on that today about how the inspectors are both on the ground and watching videos and getting information we never could have had without this agreement.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.